Okay, so I'm recording and starting.
This is Mike Doucette, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee, and I would like to call the meeting to order. First up will be a roll call of committee members attending. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Here.
Don Little, Don Little,
Don Little here.
Don Waters here,
Here.
Ron Zimba here,
Yes.
Mark Rosen here. Okay, at the moment, Mark Rosen is absent. Also, like to indicate that the Housing Board has identified Tom O'Brien as the new member from that seat. And Tom's approval process at City Council is ongoing. Hopefully, let me ask once, Tom, are you present? Tom O'Brien. Okay, and hopefully Tom will be ready to join us next meeting. All right, moving to the agenda, as everyone knows, we have the annual public information meeting, and I'd like the record to note that this meeting has been posted and advertised as required. And it's presented to give the public an opportunity to bring to us any questions or any observations or suggestions they had on the needs and possibilities and resources of the city with regard to the acquisition and preservation of open space, historic resources, affordable housing, and recreational resources, which, as you folks know, are the categories that make applications eligible for this type of funding. I'd like to ask, are there any members of the public present who would like to speak? Caitlin, do you show anyone?
I'm not seeing anyone. No, I'm just seeing Andy Port in the attendees list, but he's also in the panelist list as well.
Okay. Then what I would like to do is note that no members of the public are present. However, should any appear while the meeting is open, we can go back to this section of the agenda for that purpose. Moving on to item number 2, Eligible Avenue Grant Extension Request. I'm sorry, Edible Avenue, which we've already found to be eligible, I guess. Grant extension request. Looks like they've got about $2,000 unspent at the moment, and it would go beyond the 1-year time if they were to hold that money in order to be able to invest it in new plants for planting in the spring. Is there anyone here to speak on that?
I'm not seeing Jane Nibbling, who was the applicant at this time in the
Okay, well,
attendee list.
We can move forward without that. Jane Healy, since part of number 3 is the draft grant extension form.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Actually, Jane just attended. She's here now. Would you like me
Okay.
to allow her to talk?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Jane, the floor is yours on your application for extension. We have your email, we have your original application, and I have summarized it to the extent that you have about $2,000 left to spend and would like to extend the ability to use that into the spring for new plantings.
Well, thank you, Mike. That's about what I was going to say.
Okay,
I just, in the end, I thought about just moving away from the project now, but the fact that you granted me this money and there are $2,000 left, there's plenty still to do. So I would like permission to be able to do that. If it may be more money than I could ever spend just on plants, there are some other things I would like to get, like better signs to identify the plants, which I think is important. If that is the case, I will create a petition and submit it to the committee for one of your meetings in the winter or very early spring.
okay. Well, I think generally speaking, we don't have a November or December meeting. So January would be the next probable
Okay.
time if that were the case.
I would be ready to do something by then.
Do any of the committee members have any questions or comments for Jane?
Is anyone having a hard time hearing Mike?
Yes.
I was just now.
Yes, it's fading
I
out a
have-
little bit.
Yeah, I have my,
too.
unit here turned all the way up, so I will speak more loudly.
It's that you're fading in and out, Mike. I don't know, maybe something's moving or something's
Okay.
happening.
Okay.
Well, it's coming through well over here.
Well, I know I'm not close to Plum Island. so-
You sound
Yeah.
good now.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments for Jane Niebling on the application for the extension?
I do. This is Jane Healy. Jane, I think it's as I said before, I think it's a really great project. And I'm glad to hear about possible additional signage if you do decide to come back to us. 'Cause I was out there a few weeks ago and it was difficult to figure out what was what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that it would be great to have more, I think it would be great to have more signage. And I was also curious about maintenance plans because it could have been just the timing, but it felt a little chaotic, and that's coming from a gardener, and I completely understand how that happens. But to make it clear to the public that this is an intentional space, I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Well, the interpretive sign, which is similar to the other large signs that are on the rail trail, is finished, and that will be placed right in front of the site, right in the middle. So that will help direct people to the site as an intentional bit of landscaping and to what the possibilities are. That large sign will always also contain brochures, and it will also direct people to the website. And that website doesn't exist yet, although we do own the domain name, but it will provide descriptions of each plant and how to use it and when to harvest, etc. The little signs that I bought that I thought might work just don't work. They aren't visible enough. That's true. So we'll have more substantial signs that will not weather and degrade. And then, that steep bank that is covered with weeds, there really isn't anything we can do with that. And I've learned to love it. And I hope to use even that as an educational opportunity and bring in somebody who is a wildflower expert to lead tours just about the wildflowers. To try to eliminate those weeds is not a reasonable move. So does that sound like enough?
Yeah,
in terms
that's
of-
helpful. That's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. I think I saw a couple invasives in there. So if those.
Oh, there are
stay-
some invasives. There definitely are some invasives, but it's, everything I've read about dealing with pokeweed and Japanese knotweed, it's pretty tough to get rid of them.
No, it is.
unless you want to kill everything, which I don't want to do. So
All right, well, I think the signage will go a long way, so
yeah,
thank
it'll
you.
help. It'll help, I promise.
Hi, this is Don Walters. If I may just say a word or two, and Jane, I really do appreciate you revising the signage a bit. It's sometimes I think I view it as analogous to some of the mass signage that we have in Newburyport that I sometimes think I need not only my reading glasses, but a electron microscope. So I guess
Yeah,
not to be too
those little
political.
signs aren't good. They aren't good.
But thank you for doing it. And as a hiker sometimes who uses the app, you're probably aware of it, iNaturalist,
Mhm.
and that person who has the antithesis of a green thumb, whatever that may be. I just want to let you know, I think it's money well worth spent, and one could obviously put forth a rational case there because you have $2,000 left. Why spend it? We should put something else. But I think in these time of what I think people are looking for something enjoyable in life, I think it's the right thing to do. So I just wanted to let you know on a personal basis, as well as a member of the CPC. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, the response from the public has been extremely enthusiastic and supportive.
Yeah.
And I am now talking to Amesbury and Salisbury to try to get those communities to have similar sites on their rail trails.
Oh,
So
Terrific.
it's going to be worldwide, actually.
Why think small?
right.
Any
Well,
other
you
other
know,
questions? Any other questions or comments?
Looks
Yes,
like,
this is Ron Ziemba.
oh, Ron, hi,
How you doing, Jane?
good.
I just wanted to say that this has always struck me as a very commendable project and uniquely Newburyport in a strange way. I'm glad to see you're devoting some attention to signage, and I feel badly that your first efforts on the small signs didn't quite work out. It's not as easy as it sounds sometimes to develop signs that work and can be read. But I would encourage you to pursue that signage question, because that's ultimately what's going to make this a good project, I think.
I think it's pretty important.
So good. Congratulations to you. And I love your idea to expand this to the world, especially to Amesbury and Salisbury.
Well, that's where I'm starting.
Good show.
Thank you.
Questions? Could I have a motion for approval?
I move approval.
I'll second.
And I'll take a roll call. Jane Healy,
Yes,
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Ron Ziemba,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Jane Healy, question for you. Do you think we should launch the approval of this request with your new form?
meaning have Jane fill out the form if we approve it, or?
Yes, in it as a way to walk at least one through the system to see if as a maiden voyage, through the mayor's office.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good. Jane may not know what we're talking about, though.
I don't, but there's a form and somehow it will get to me and I will fill it out.
Yeah, it's a fairly simple form. We're formalizing the extension process.
Okay,
And so you'll fill it out. It's basically just saying that you'd like an extension and a very simple explanation as to why.
okay,
And we are going to discuss it later, how the process works, but hopefully on your end, it will be fairly seamless once you
okay.
fill it out.
So someone will email me a form.
Yes.
Caitlin, does that sound right?
That sounds right. Hi, Jane, it's Caitlin. I'll email you the form
Okay,
to fill
thank
out.
you, Caitlin.
Hi, this is Rachel. I just want to quickly confirm that the motion was put up by Paul and Ron.
Ron moved and Paul seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is
Thank
Tom
you.
Walters. Is anyone else hearing anything garbled? And while I can understand it, it's garbled, most of the speakers, or is it perhaps just my connection?
Yes, it's garbled to me right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so am I,
Yes, you are free to leave.
all right. Thank you, CPC. I am extremely grateful to you for what you have been able to allow me and the other people I work with to do. And it's a great project and it will be even better when I'm through with it. But I'll never be through with it. So thanks.
Thank you for that and all your efforts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Long, Jane, so that you can leave when you need to. We're going to talk about the grant extension form and process, and you can report out of your subcommittee.
Sure. I really have to give 99% of the credit to Caitlin. She's come up with the form for applicants to ask for an extension. And we tried to keep it as simple as possible. And I think that that has been achieved. But of course, any input is welcome. And there's also another component of it is finally we have all the projects in one spot in a spreadsheet with their, it's currently just says when the grant has expired, but going forward, we'll keep track of any grant requests that's happened. So I hope that everyone had a chance to take a look at them both. I think the form will be very helpful for everyone, and then the spreadsheet I'm going to find it incredibly helpful in trying to figure out where we are and who needs to do what, essentially, in terms of asking for an extension, or if we currently, looking back at it, goes all the way back to 2010. There's several applications or several grants that we need to talk to the applicant basically and see if they want to. I think what we need to decide tonight or talk about tonight is, do we want to close out or extend these grants? But I think a first step will be talking to the applicants.
Am I correct that the expiration date on the far right-hand column of the spreadsheet is the original expiration date?
I believe so. Caitlin, is that the case?
That's right. Yep, that was 1 year from, I guess, the approval date.
So that,
So you can see the projects that, had their approvals back in or fiscal year 2010 had the expiration date, 1 year after that. So you can see there's a handful of projects that, are basically expired and some of the funds haven't been used yet. For example, the housing rehab program, we have a planned call with that program manager, I think next week, to understand, what the future is for those funds. So we're kind of like plugging away at trying to reach these old applicants and see what their status is.
but then none of the original expiration dates might reflect whether or not any of these have been extended in the past.
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to be like a step 2 that we're going to be adding
Okay.
into there. Have like a column for, when they did get an extension.
Okay, good. I have one suggestion for the form,
Yes.
and that's the person, where it says person completing the form, it can be a signature line with a printed name under it.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
curious about for the, if it goes to both those email addresses, the CPC email, Caitlin, does that go to you or does that go, where does that go? The
I believe that
CPC?
goes to, I checked on this, it goes to, I think, believe myself and our office coordinator, Diane Beauvert.
Okay.
No, it doesn't come to me
But perhaps
unless,
we don't need both of them on there.
This is Andy. Could I speak to that?
Yeah.
Caitlin's correct. We could put one email address. I was talking with Diane the other day. There's a way we could essentially have a distribution list. So one is sufficient.
Well, that simplifies things even more. So that sounds good.
where are we in terms of cluing in the other end of this? That is the mayor's office, and you know, what's gonna be the easiest way to process it through there?
Well, Caitlin and I work on a regular basis to package information for the mayor's office that needs to be acted on or coordinated. So you know, Caitlin and I would essentially take care of that.
Andy, you can weigh in on this. Is there any sense that you have that you think city council is diving in deep enough to want a say in extensions?
No, I don't see that as being an issue, well, at least not with the projects we've had thus far. You know, there was some recent discussion about the shoreline protection project for the rail trail, but I think that stuff is largely sort of settled itself out. But generally speaking, the only time we would really be going back to the council would be if there was an explicit condition from the city council limiting the amount of time that the grant funds would be available. So that that happened with the rail trail project, for instance. But the council also made an adjustment based on the project needs. So obviously they were responsive when that issue came up. But generally speaking, we would not send this back to the council. The mayor could deal with the contractual update directly. We would essentially have to circle back to the council should they put an explicit condition in there of their own saying, you know, the funds expire on whatever date or without extension. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if they have a specific condition with a date, then it would have to loop through them. But otherwise, I'm good with the mayor's office signing off. Are there any other questions or discussions on this?
Yeah, I had a question. You know, in the first line of this request form, it says complete within 12 months of the grant agreement. What if, you know, someone comes in, requests some funding and we give them a grant and we know it's going to be a 5-year project? Isn't that in the original grant that they have 5 years to use it? And then, so do they, if they haven't finished in 5 years, do they then apply for this grant extension?
I believe that would be the case. I don't think we've ever specifically recommended a grant that extends beyond the 1-year renewable.
That's correct.
I think we have, or we've just left it very, you know, in the past we've been very loose on it. You know, like everybody knows it's going to take a couple of years, and you know, nobody was really following up on that. You know, it was a small enough process at that point.
I think it's a better idea to the default position is 1 year renewable, and it keeps people's attention.
Okay.
And keeps us informed. And if we've streamlined a pretty easy system, then it's also there's accountability there. You know, if
Right.
you know, somebody says, well, you know, who's been looking at this? You've got, you know, every year you've got a process that has been looked at and approved. So.
Okay. No, that's good. Yeah. And And then I had another question, when I was reading through that spreadsheet of ones that have expired and some are still in process, but there were some that really looked like the project is done. There was just some money left in the bucket. I wonder if we should have another very simple form like this where the applicant says, okay, the project is done. And I got this much money left over. I don't need it. So we can take it back in.
Oh, so at the end of the project,
Yeah.
they submit something that says, I'm officially done and this much is left. And
Right,
I give it up. That's a
right.
good idea.
I think
Yeah.
that's a very good idea.
That is a good idea. I've always wondered what the formal process is for kind of closing it out, and I think a form would be great. Something like this.
Sound like more work for Jane's subcommittee?
I think Caitlin can handle that. Can you,
Yeah,
Caitlin?
That's fine. I'll come up with something and we'll show it at the next meeting.
Thank
Yeah.
sounds-
you.
Yep.
That sounds good. Okay. Good. Well, then, if are there any other questions or comments about the form?
I just wanted to speak a bit to your question about city council. We had talked about that, our approval. And we had talked about that a bit when we got together, when Don and I and Caitlin and Andy got together. Just because of the new situation, at least this year, where the city council had put some stipulations on the grant, and that will be noted in the spreadsheet. And so we can keep track of any dates that are a little bit different than that 12-month requirement.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. Good idea. Okay, so I think that we give an imprimatur to the process and the form. How about if we have a motion to adopt the form and the process for the extensions?
Moved.
Paul moved. Is there a second?
Second,
Ron seconded. Roll call. Jane Healy,
Yes.
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Don Walters,
Yes. Yes.
and Ron Ziemba.
yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you. Okay, also before Jane leaves, 3A on the agenda, committee elections for chair and vice chair. In the past, there's been fingers pointing across tables while we're face to face to see if somebody wants to do it.
Mhm.
We can't do the finger pointing for ease of decision. If elected, I would serve. And I'll let Jane speak for herself.
Likewise.
Then I would nominate Mike and Jane to continue on.
Second,
Ron seconding, Paul moving. We'll do another roll call. Jane Healy,
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little enthusiastically, yes.
Ron Walters,
Yes.
Ron Ziemba.
yes.
And chair votes yes, I guess. Okay. All right. We can note for the record that the following have been received and filed. We've got the 10/15 2020 quarterly reports. We have the draft application that I will come back to in a minute. We have the, let's see. Nothing else to approve and file. I mean, receive and file. Okay, 3C, draft application has been circulated. Are there any changes in that or comments on it from anyone?
No, it's okay.
Hearing none, I guess we'll move forward with that form. All right, the draft budget that we've received. Caitlin, the question I have for it, it's good. It's the same form we've seen, and I understand where all the numbers are coming from. I'm not certain in terms of commitments for the 2021 year. If the proposed, already approved, but not yet acquired bond for the Fuller Field, it seems to me that if that were to go online, and an initial payment would have to be made sometime during 2021, that would be a prior commitment, which would need to be serviced like the other debt service, and would reduce the available funds. So I guess my question to find out for an update for the next meeting is, I guess we'll know sooner rather than later what they're going to do with that bond at City Council. And then after that, to ask the Controller's Office when the first payment might hit.
Okay, yes, we'll do that. I think the City Council is speaking about that project tomorrow night. And when I do have an update, and I'll have Ethan Manning send around a new budget for you all. He also put in a placeholder for the estimated state match. That will probably also end up being revised.
Yes, certainly. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the budget?
This is Don. Just a quick question to Jane. You mentioned that this is up on the City Council agenda. Do you have any additional information, or is this something independent of the actions or responsibilities of the CPC?
Don, was that to me or was that to Caitlin?
Well, how about either one? I guess it was to you, Jane. You mentioned something about City Council, but Caitlin, be glad for her to answer it, of course.
Oh, that was probably to me. I just mentioned that. And I guess I would ask Andy Poor to give, I guess, an update on what the City Council is discussing tomorrow night and maybe deciding upon.
Yeah, so this particular project has been kept in the City Council's Budget and Finance Committee for quite a while. I guess there were some concerns from the council members about the scope of the project, some details, I think I'll defer to them, but I wanted to have a little bit more specificity or confidence in some of the details. So I think that my understanding anyway is that Councilor Tonter is trying to see if that will come out of the Budget and Finance Committee so that the City Council could on the floor take a vote relative to that project before the calendar year end, which is how they typically try to address things at year end. I don't know how the council will vote on this particular project. There may be still concern from various councilors. COVID obviously has had an impact on this, city's overall concern regarding finances for, the coming year. And so the council will have to decide. Granted, the CPA funds are separate from the rest of the city budget, but they are mindful of expenditures right now. So we'll leave it to the council, but effectively what I think is happening is Councilor Tonter, who's chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, is bringing that out of committee, hopefully tomorrow night, so that the full council can take a vote on it at their next regular meeting.
So, Andy, just one quick question. I think just to confirm, because this is coming from CPA funds, which perhaps could be used for, in theory, something else, another project by the city that others may think is more needed. But if this comes out, is there any incremental funds coming from the actual, what I call general budget of the city to fund this project? Or is it completely state funds and whatever donations and, wherever the income streams are coming from to fund this project?
Yeah, that's actually an update that I think Louise Reed, the Parks Director, will have to provide to the Budget and Finance Committee tomorrow. I did try to check in with her to get an update prior to that, but Caitlin and I did not, prior to the close of business today, get an update on that. So we're hopeful that we're going
Okay.
to please read tomorrow night at the committee meeting.
Thanks. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving along. Caitlin, the status of the CP3 reporting to the state?
Yes, that's been completed.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything new in the status of the preservation restrictions?
There's been a little bit of movement on a couple of them in the past month or two. The People's United Methodist Church were able to get a draft before the Historical Commission. The Historical Commission, I guess, approved that draft, and they have now sent it off to Mass Historic for review. I believe that the Custom House just received some comments back from MHC, and so they're working, I guess, on a second draft. The Central Congregational Church, I believe, just had their PR approved in the City Council. And so that has been, a little bit of movement on some of the PRs that have CPA funds attached to them.
Yeah, this is Andy. If I could just speak to the Central Congregational Church.
Yep.
The City Council's got that partly way through their process of approval, but I think that for the CPA itself, you might recall there was some discussion, I don't know how long ago at this point, but about the window replacements that were done prior to the preservation restriction being recorded. That might have undermined the historical integrity that would have been protected by the PR that was required by the use of CPA funds. And so there was some disagreement perhaps in terms of how that preservation restriction was meant to cover the building and the timing and so forth. But now that the windows have been replaced, there's a question there, I think, for the council, for the mayor, and perhaps for the CPC to weigh in on as to whether or not the remaining funds that have not yet been distributed under that grant, whether those remaining funds should be distributed, given that the again, a substantial amount of money was spent on replacing windows prior to the PR that would have protected that building, and that is, as you know, required by statute when when the city expends CPA funds on private property that it doesn't have any direct control over. So that it may be worthwhile for the CPC to decide whether or not you want to weigh in on that. For the council's benefit, they will have to make a decision about that to clarify for us, because those funds were essentially put on hold. They got 75,000 originally, 50,000 were distributed, and 25,000 had not yet been released. So if the CPC wants to weigh in on that, feel free. It might be helpful to the council, but the Historic Commission, like Caitlin said, has approved, and the City Council has approved the PR, which of course now doesn't include those original windows that were there.
Do you have, Andy, do you have any idea of the timing on our weighing in, and, will we be invited, or how might that work?
I would suggest actually, and I'll defer if you want to, let us know how you want to communicate. Certainly Caitlin and I can transfer that information over to the council members and sort of save you that effort. But bottom line, I guess, is it would be worthwhile to communicate that to the council before the calendar year end, because the council is, effectively approving the PR, like Caitlin said. The next request that we're sure to get from the Central Congregational Church is, can we get the remainder of our funds now that the PR is recorded? And so, again, to the extent that the CPC has a concern that if it does, that the original expectation of a PR did not then protect those windows, essentially that the church, apparently it appears to have gone under some advice of council that they proceed with the windows, prior to that PR being recorded, that, it seems to me that the CPC might want to weigh in on that before the calendar year end, because I suspect the Central Congregational Church will be asking for the remainder of the funds to be released, arguing that the PR being recorded fulfills the requirements or the concerns, for going back to this original grant. We now specify in the grant agreements, just like we do with permits, we've been trying to update and provide clearer language. We now require that those PRs be recorded before the funds are released, so that we don't run into situations like this where someone might replace historic features before getting the PR that's required on record. So I would suggest communicating, and you can do it through us if you need, but through the chairs of the Budget and Finance and Planning Development Committee. That's Councilor Heather Shand and Councilor Charlie Taunter. Through their committees and through the council as a whole, you could communicate a letter or communicate through us, and we can transfer that, recommendation. But you might want to weigh in on that if you feel any interest in doing so. Otherwise, the council will make a determination in conjunction with the mayor.
Okay, but do you know whether or not the PR itself and its terms have been approved yet? Do we have a final document?
No, not yet. It has not yet been recorded. So the city council has done its first step in approving it. They have to take one more vote, obviously. But once that happens, then it will be routed for the formality of signatures from the state on the city side and the church's own signature. Then it will be recorded. So it's not on record yet.
I guess I, for one, think that document would be important to have in front of us before we discuss a position one way or the other on the release of the balance of the grant.
Chair, if I could just speak to that just for a moment. Certainly we can pass that document on to you, whether it's the draft or the final version that's recorded, but fundamentally the question for the CPC will be effectively the same, which is the only difference from what the original PR might have been, because again, the Historic Commission weighed in on and determined what was required to be incorporated. The only real difference here is the same thing we know now, which is that there were windows replaced prior to the recording of the PR. So I just wanted to point out that situation will not change in the coming weeks or months.
Am I correct in my recollection that the window issue had to do with the type of replacements that were done and whether or not they're deemed approved, or they would have been deemed approved by the Historical Commission?
No, that requires maybe a more lengthy discussion of how the permitting process works. But generally speaking, I suspect that the windows that were replaced would not have been approved for replacement under the ordinances that the city has. There's a formal process that one has to go through to do that in the downtown overlay district. However, the church also going to council, their own council, took the position that they are exempt from certain zoning provisions under the state statutes and the so-called Dover Amendment. This was one of the concerns. One of the issues that raised some concern for council members was that the church was effectively arguing that they were exempt from zoning regulations and controls that the city might have to protect, physical features like this. Yet we're asking for city funds to preserve the same, structure or facility. So, I'm not a window expert, but what I know of the windows and having walked through the building, looking at them, and we did discuss more recently some other windows that the church would like to replace, and it's our understanding that they'd prefer to replace those as well. And we explained the process for that. The Historic Commission actually had a exchange with the church, who had, again, using their counsel, forwarded to Mass Historical a preservation restriction that would have allowed them more latitude than what the Historic Commission here had essentially agreed to originally or had discussed. The Historic Commission then pointed that out and said, that's not what we talked about. As you know, we're concerned about window replacements. And so they took that language out. There seems to be still a desire from the church to replace further windows. I'm not convinced that that is something that would meet local zoning provisions. As I pointed out, the church has already taken the position and disputed that they are exempt under zoning. So they may take that position again if they're not satisfied with the result under zoning. And again, like I said, I wouldn't expect those windows to be eligible for replacement based on what I can see of them and know of them. But again, and that's just a quick synopsis, but let me know if you have further questions.
Thank you. I think the reason I asked for the document was if the document itself, the preservation restriction, now covers whatever windows they want to do more work to, then the fight about zoning is moot.
It does now, and I would agree. The argument under zoning would effectively go away because at least the PR, permanent restriction on the property would control, even if the zoning act or the zoning regulations of the city do not. So I agree with you on that. Yeah, and like I said, you will be in the same situation going forward. The churches acknowledge that the PR must cover the remaining windows and they must go through the Historic Commission to get that review and approval. But effectively, the only question left over is, does anything change given that a number of windows were replaced prior to the recording of the PR?
Sorry, this is Jane. I'm going to have to leave now.
Thanks, Jane.
Anyone, if I need to follow up with anyone or on anything, just let me know.
Okay, Jane, thank you.
All right, take care.
Okay, Andy, I appreciate this information, and I think we likely would need to get it on an agenda for a later meeting and get a sense of the committee on taking a position. And I think in that regard, having at least a final draft in front of us, not necessarily the recorded document. So unless anybody feels differently, I think we can move on from that issue.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah.
All right, approval of the minutes. We've got actually two sets that need approval. I'll take a motion on the minutes of July 29.
Motion to approve minutes of July 29.
Second? Okay, I'll do a second on that. And I'm going to do a roll call collectively. So I'd like a motion as well for the minutes of August 19.
Move to accept the minutes of August 19.
Second that. Roll call on the approval of the minutes. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Rod Ziemba,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Okay, does anybody have any other new business? Hearing none, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank everybody for coming.
Okay. Thank you.